Well, I'm joined now by retired Air-Marshal Sean Bell to discuss all of this. Let's touch on this admission now by Iran that they have been supplying drones to Russia. I guess it was suspected for a while, but why are they admitting it all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's worth a bit of background. The last couple of weeks, we've been reporting the widespread targeting of critical national infrastructure by Russia of Ukraine using the Shahed 136 drones, which Iran at the time said they had not provided to the Russians. Yet the Iranians now have admitted they have provided them, but have qualified that, saying they've provided them a couple of months before the start of the war. That's all part of Iran trying to position itself not to take sides in this. Russia's used about 300 of these drones so far, but it needs another couple of hundred by all accounts, and it's also looking for Iranian support to provide other missiles, potentially surface-to-air missile systems. But returning to your question of why now, it does appear that Iran is seeking to exploit this Russian dependency on it for weapons and seeking to create a more bilateral, more equal partnership relationship with Russia. What's interesting, I think, is Russia desperately needs the weapons. What is it that Iran's seeking? And it's widely reported now that Iran is actually looking for help with its fledgling nuclear program. And if that's true, that's a very worrying development.
Let's move on to the latest situation on the ground here in Ukraine. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so in Kherson, we've been talking a lot about Kherson. President Putin's announced that he's trying to get civilians evacuated out of the city. Is that a precursor to a bigger withdrawal, or is that preparing for fighting? The honest answer is we don't know. But it's worth reminding the viewers that from a Ukrainian perspective, they'd be really reluctant to fight their way into Kherson. That would be an incredibly difficult and dangerous undertaking. Probably what they're trying to do at the moment is to isolate the tens of thousands of Russian troops that are trapped in Kherson. They've blown the bridges over the Dnipro River and cause a real logistics challenge for Russia supplying those forces potentially as the winter goes on. From a military analyst perspective, we still generally believe that Russia will withdraw, but probably a fighting withdrawal to stop the Ukrainians turning it into a rout. In Donetsk is the other region we're looking at massive fighting by the Russians. It's about the only part of the country where the Russians are on the front foot and pushing really hard. If you look at the Luhansk region up the north there, that's already owned and occupied by the Russians. Donetsk, though, there's a huge white area there that the Russians haven't yet got. The Russians are pushing everything at that attack. The Ukrainians said there were 80 attacks in one day mounted, which is a huge effort, massive casualties, almost certainly from the Russian side to do that. Why? Because it appears that there's a desperate effort by the Russians to try to take that before the winter period. It's part of Putin's special military operation.
And talk us through the latest on the Russian forces, Sean, because they've obviously been trying to get the numbers up. How's that going and what's the sort of status at the moment? Yeah,
it's really interesting. They've been focused on quantity but not on quality. They had this partial mobilisation to get 300,000 troops. In addition to that, they've now got another 120,000 they're trying to source, which is the annual requirement for Russia to generate replacements for its conscript army. The challenge is who does the training for these military folks, because all the trainers are actually at war at the moment. So they're doing it up in Belarus up to the north. Belarus is not known well for its international defence training, so those troops are hitting the battle really badly trained. We've talked a lot about this training and why it's important. Good example came out overnight. Russian military commander in the Donbass, Alexander Khodorkovsky, claimed that 60% of the Russian casualties in the Donbass were caused by friendly fire. Now, although friendly fire is an issue for any military, it's normally fractions of a percent, maybe 2 or 3%. To see it at 5%, even if that's been grossly exaggerated, is a dreadful indictment of the Russian military training. Why is that happening? They've had several generals replaced. They've got lots of ill-trained, ill-equipped forces in place, and they've got a mix of forces and the mercenary forces, and they're bad communication, bad command and control, bad coordination. Whatever the challenges, though, this is not going to be an easy thing for the Russians to fix.
Sean Bell, as always, thanks so much.